Introduction. I have spent most of my adult life working in the criminal justice system. I joined the U.S. Attorney's Office back in 1989 as a line AUSA, and I've been with the Department of Justice ever since. I believe in law and order, and I have asked judges to impose tough sentences when I felt like the law and the facts demanded them. But one of the first lessons that I learned when I was an AUSA, and that remains true today, is the fact that our job at the Department of Justice is not just to secure convictions, and it's not to obtain the longest sentence that we can possibly obtain. Our responsibility is actually pretty simple. It's to seek justice every single day in every single case. And that's it, to seek justice. And this requires certainly resolve and determination, but it also requires empathy and a sense of proportionality. And these days, as you heard from Professor Arlen, there's a lot of talk these days about criminal justice reform. And I feel like we're at a unique moment in our history where people from, both ends of the political spectrum and in between are coming together to recognize that it's time for a change. And in fact, there was a coalition that came together about a month ago in the Senate to introduce a bill that's really designed to address proportionality in sentencing, and specifically for lower-level nonviolent drug offenders. In short, it's designed to ensure that the punishment fits the crime. I know how badly that our system needs reform. As the Deputy Attorney General, I do oversee the day-to-day operations of the department, and that includes not just the prosecutors, but also our agencies, the FBI and DEA and ATF and the Bureau of Prisons. And so I really see our criminal justice system from all sides. And I can tell you confidently that the status quo needs to change. We need to be willing to step back and to take a look at how we have managed criminal justice in the past and be willing to adjust our way of thinking. I want to tell you a little bit about a recent trip that I took to Charleston, South Carolina, that I think illustrates how a new way of thinking can work. I visited a few weeks ago in a promising new prisoner reentry program there. It's a program called Turning Leaf there, which is a collaboration between state and federal prosecutors, between the courts there, as well as the city's business community. And there's this woman there who's this sort of the quintessential tough but fair executive director who really cares passionately about the offenders that she is working with there. Well, one of the cornerstones of this program, this alternative program that they have, is cognitive behavioral therapy, which is known as CBT. And part of what makes CBT so interesting is that it really focuses the individuals on how to think differently. It's in a sense trying to reprogram their brain to help them control their criminal impulses and to make better decisions. And 29 red states and blue states all across the country have enacted state criminal justice reform. And even Congress, which really doesn't agree on much these days, appears to be on the cusp of significant sentencing reform legislation. But if we're really serious about building safer communities, if we're really committed to justice as a country, we need to be willing to invest in stopping crime before it starts. We have to be willing to invest in breaking the cycle of generational lack of access to educational opportunity and the resulting illiteracy and poverty that follows from that. We have to be willing to invest in real prevention and reentry programs in a big systemic way, not just in a smattering of pilot programs. We all know that we can't simply jail our way into safer communities, but until we are willing to invest in preventing crime in the same way that we are willing to invest in sending people to prison, then our communities will not be as safe, nor will our criminal justice system be as fair as it should be. And when we talk about prevention, we also need to be talking about rehabilitation, because prisoner rehabilitation is crime prevention. The fact is that 95% of all prisoners, state and federal, are going to come out of prison. They're going to eventually be released. And we know also that as things currently stand right now, about 40% of federal offenders, 40% of people who are in federal prison, and about 75% of those who are in state prison will reoffend within 3 years of their release with the way that we're doing things right now. And so we have got to find better ways to break that cycle. We also know that the best way to reduce recidivism is to reintegrate ex-offenders into their communities. They need the same things that all of us need. They need stability and support. They need jobs and homes and friends and families. But so many people in our society don't want to have anything to do with someone once they've gone to prison. We're more likely to sort of pin the scarlet letter on them and to shun them. But the irony of this, of course, is that this view is really pretty self-defeating, because by ostracizing this class of citizens, we increase the risk of recidivism and we make our communities less safe, not more safe. So it's up to all of us to reject this way of thinking. Rather than creating greater distance between ex-offenders and the communities that they're rejoining, we should be creating better and stronger pathways for reentry. We got a lot of work to do when they get out of prison. But the job skills taught by FPI are really only going to be useful if somebody's willing to hire them when they get out of prison. It's hard enough to find a job, but just imagine if you've got to put convicted felon on your resume, how much more difficult it is. And there are definitely some companies who are willing to look past this and to give ex-offenders an opportunity, but there are far more companies who are not willing to and won't even give somebody a shot at being able to be considered for a job. So we need more employers to be willing to give ex-offenders an opportunity to compete. And we also need more businesses to take an active role in the reentry process. And we need companies to partner with prisons and to help ex-offenders really move seamlessly from their prison life to their life outside of prison. Building safe communities is not solely the responsibility of law enforcement. We all have an obligation, all of us as citizens, to give those who are returning to our society an opportunity, just a fighting chance to live the lives that we have. So I want to challenge, and I'd like to ask you to challenge individuals and businesses to see this as part of our social responsibility as citizens. It's a necessary step to create a safer and a more stable society. It's possible, but only if we can convince them to think differently. Achieving really meaningful criminal justice reform is not going to be easy. And we must all participate in this process, both government and private citizens alike. 3 decades ago, when our country was focused just on being tough on crime, it was hard to imagine that we would ever be in the position that we are now to be able to restore proportionality to our federal sentencing laws. But we're closer than ever, really, thanks to the sustained efforts of those who are willing to call out injustices and to demand meaningful change. It's time that we collectively discard our old assumptions and to embrace new ideas.